Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. A lot going on in the world, everybody. We will be your 2-hour release today to talk about our Philadelphia Eagles, the NFL trade deadline, a whole lot going on in the NFL world and the Philadelphia Eagles world, as there always is. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
The sun came up, so
I love that line.
If you're unhappy, it'll be fine. If you're happy, it'll be fine. You'll be fine. Sun came up. Wingnut season is over, but it's never really over, as I said. But at least no more political calls and political texts. So if everybody wants a silver lining, at least you don't have to deal with that bull, what, anymore. So look at the bright side.
So the political conversation, which we will not have, is proof, though, that Mr. John McMullen is even-keeled all the way throughout. It's the first thing he said to me this morning. The sun came up. I said, that's classic Johnny Mac right there, and I love it.
Well, South Park is always – I think South Park is tremendous for people who aren't fans, for people who are fans, because they're usually about 5 years ahead of everything.
They really are.
And they do so much brilliant satire. And years ago, they did an election show where, half the town was split and everybody was partying when their candidate won, and everybody was huddling in the garage expecting the end of the world when their candidate lost. It's they're about 5 years ahead of the game, really 10 years typically. But again, look for the silver lining. No more political calls, political texts. So everybody can get on board. That's one thing we could all agree on, right?
I would hope so. I think there's something that, I think there's plenty of things that we can all be united on a country that maybe
there should be. There should be.
But that's certainly one I think we can all get behind. No more ads, no more texts, no more calls, no more this. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Great takeaway. We will not bog you down with some of the political talk. We will be your release today. John, the trade deadline, it came and it went yesterday, the 4 p.m. deadline. The Eagles did not make a move. Now, I will say first, I had no problem with them not making a move, but a couple other NFC teams did make a move. Really, the teams that I think could be competing with the Eagles late in the year, and the Commanders make a move for Marshawn Lattimore, and the Lions also made a move, adding Zadarius Smith. What you kind of make of how the deadline went yesterday? All the teams that made moves, the Eagles standing pat. What were your takeaways from the trade deadline yesterday?
Well, from the Eagles' perspective, I mentioned I didn't think they needed much. I think the depth has gotten better with the return of Sidney Brown and the improvement of some certain players. So if something came across Howie Roseman's desk, he'd do it. You're always looking to get incrementally better, but right. I didn't see any splash moves out there. The one position is edge rusher, and that becomes more difficult because you almost have to do two moves, because that means that somebody's got to leave. And we talked about a little bit about Bryce Huff, but that was unrealistic, and obviously it didn't happen. And they stand pat, which is not typical of Howie, and I get, because those are two big name players, and people love big name players, going to teams ahead of the Eagles right now in the standings in the NFC. So it seems like maybe they've gotten a little bit better, and the Eagles stood pat. But, as Vic Fangio said again yesterday, he liked where he was. He didn't need anything else. And I think the Eagles certainly feel that way offensively. So I don't think it's as harsh as people expect. Now, Washington getting Marshawn Lattimore is that to me, that's a big move.
Yeah,
that's still a really good player, and I mean really good player.
Yeah, when you talked about him highly, when the Eagles went up against the Saints this year, and I think he was on the injury report at the time, and he is a very good player, John. I thought that was a tremendous move as well.
Yeah, and he's only 28. Now, he has had a bunch of injury issues, so that works into it. He hasn't played a full season since 2021, so that's part of the reason why he's getting traded, because if he's healthy, there's no way they're trading him.
Right.
And he hasn't been able to stay healthy in the past number of years, but when he's out there, he's difficult to deal with, and that's a team, starting, after or in a short week. It's Dallas and Washington. That Washington game is shaping up as going to be something really relevant to this season for the Eagles. So I thought that was a really good move. Adam Peters keeps knocking it out of the park as a first-year GM.
Yeah, he's doing a really nice job.
Yeah. So I thought that was meaningful. And Darius Smith made a lot of sense. He's older, but they lost Aiden Hutchinson. I think Detroit was the best team without him, and they're probably going to be the best team with him. But it made sense. Not as in all of that move. I think the Lattimore move is bigger. But from the Eagles' perspective, yeah, I didn't see a lot of places to add, to be honest. So even though, and I like how he likes to do things, and I know when other teams get big name players, the Eagles fans typically are going to want big name players, but where are you going to fit them? Where are you going to fit them?
Yeah, no, that's why I said I have no issue with the Eagles standing pat. I like who we have. I will say this about, and I'll ask you another question about the Marshawn Lattimore move, just because I think that it's got big implications for the Eagles. These are two teams, obviously, that you kind of hold yourself up to par against. Not so much the Commanders, but more so the Detroit Lions. And we'll see about the Commanders. But there's a Darius Smith move, John. When that happened, I'm thinking, okay, Zadarius is kind of old. He's having like a really a pretty good season right now. He has 5 sacks already this season, 8 assisted tackles and 23 combined. He's having a pretty good season for his age. He's still a good player. That could really help that Detroit defense after losing Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, I that's the one guy I mentioned as maybe the old player that was a fit for the Eagles. But again, then you have to make another move to try to get somebody out. And the Eagles, they took Albert Okwegman on as far as they possibly could. As soon as the trade deadline ends, they finally release him. So you have to make 2 moves, and that would really affect Bryce Huff. And we talked about how we signing him to a $51 million deal. And I get that, it's just more difficult than it looks. You can't just add somebody and say, all right, we're going to bench our $51 million edge rushers. So, I mean, I like the fit from a football sense, but sometimes business gets in the way, and it doesn't look like they were even involved because probably of that business sense. But, Detroit has been honing in on that for a while now, and they got it done. He's not Aiden Hutchinson, though. So if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
But
You're not trading for a guy that's Aiden Hutchinson in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
And then the Marshawn Lattimore move, John. Now, I don't remember. You'd have to enlighten me. But what age was Darius Slay when the Eagles acquired Slay? Was he around 28?
He was around 30.
Yeah, I kind of looked at I know they're not the same player, but I kind of looked at this as like that type of a move for the Commanders where they wanted to shore up their secondary with a talented, more veteran player. I loved the move from their perspective to go and get Marshawn Lattimore. I think he's a great player. Obviously, health is always a concern, but welcome to the NFL. It's a concern with everybody. Your thoughts overall, or your thoughts more specifically on that?
Well, the one thing I would say in that particular comparison, and Slay is 33 now. He'll turn 34. He's a New Year's baby, New Year's Day, so he'll turn 34. They got him in 2020, so he's on the cusp of 30, right around 30. But Slay has been tremendously durable until the past last year. He missed a few games with the knee injury. And this year, now he's out with a groin. He's been banged up with a knee. So the age is starting to catch up with him a little bit when it comes to the injuries. As I said, Marshawn hasn't played, He played 16 games in 2021. Since then, he played 7 in 2022 and 10 in 2023. And now he's played 7 this year. So, which is fine. Obviously, this year it's been relatively healthy, but a little bit more of an injury risk than Slay had been. He had been very durable, but same type of he's that type of corner. I mean, Slay's made 6 Pro Bowls, but he's going to be 34. Lattimore's made 4. Rookie of the year. You know, just like Slay, a ton of pass breakups, 18 as a rookie, 19 in that 2021 season. I mean, he's one of the best cover guys in the NFL. And a division rival got him. That ain't good.
What do you think of the fact that they used the third? Now, it wasn't the third the Eagles sent, but that did give them obviously another third round pick.
Gave him the ammunition. I tweeted that out. That's part of it. Even though it's not the same pick, when you have an extra third round pick, it makes you feel more comfortable moving a third round pick. So yeah, I mean, be nice if John Dotson can start picking it up. He made the big catch, the circus catch. But yeah, I mean, right now, if you're, saying who's having the better year, Howie Roseman or Adam Peters, in this snapshot on November 6th, I would say Adam Peters.
In year, I would say, yeah, but Howie Roseman did assemble a good team. It's starting to look like this team is really coming along. John, you put out the tweet yesterday, by the way, that went really big. I mean, I went back to find it. I'm like, holy shit, this thing's got a lot of interaction on it. But I think you said the Eagles were 3rd in overall defense and 6th in overall offense, or was it vice versa?
No. Third, you're right. 3rd in defense, 6th in offense.
So I mean, look, they're playing good football right now,
and those are traditional. By the way, everybody asks. You get the nerds, and those statistics are outdated. I'll be the first one, but that's what the NFL uses.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's what the NFL. So it's total yardage. Eagles are 6th offensive, 3rd defensive. And there's DVOA, and there's film grades from Pro Football Focus and blah, blah,
Well, what
blah.
do you make of the DVOA? Because you remember we had Aaron Schatz on in the summer. You remember what he said about the Eagles?
And I don't know where the Eagles are.
Wins for the Eagles, and the Cowboys will win the NFC East. That's what he said right here on Birds 365.
Well,
now, I'm not criticizing Aaron. I'm just saying.
Well, they're, and predictable. Remember, Nick talked about it yesterday. They won 12 games, like 3 consecutive years or whatever, 13. I don't know what they.
Yeah.
Cowboys have been really good. And they've kind of fallen apart. But you're doing predictive models, and, sometimes it doesn't work. Hey, speaking of politics, hey, predictive models don't work sometimes.
Yeah. Right. Great point.
Especially if they're biased. But in the case of DVOA, it's not biased. But, to use PFF, and I don't have DVOA. Speaking of Aaron, those guys were supposed to send me that link, but they never did. I have to circle back. They're 3rd in PFF defensively. Offensively, they're a little bit worse at number 10. But any measure you look at, they're playing well on both sides of the football right now. And they're a good team. But we're now, we know the expectations. They've only increased. They got to beat Washington and Detroit. Washington and Detroit seemingly got better at the trade deadline, and the Eagles didn't. It's fair to say that, but I wouldn't overreact to it, but it's fair to say it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of the
by the way, we got to do some business on air. Mike says he didn't get a link.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's going to be my fault. I'll take the blame for that one. I was lost in the weeds. Not a lot of sleep last night, Johnny Mac. Let me send Mike real quick. John, real quick, though. Speaking of the Eagles' upcoming opponent and the NFC East, Cowboys also made a move yesterday for Jonathan Mingo, I believe his name is, the wide receiver What'd you make of that move? I know it happened on the air yesterday, but now that you're a day removed from it, or at least maybe had a chance to review it, are they still trying to compete this year? Like I didn't really
No,
know what to make of that move
no,
with Dak on the IR and stuff.
that's a really young player. 23, drafted in 2023, second round pick, didn't work out in Carolina, and the Cowboys probably liked him in the draft and want him to be, you're taking a shot on him being a foundational piece, like Vic would say, that he's going to be there. You're getting him on his rookie deal. And if it clicks, it's a good deal. But to me, that's nowhere near an indication of, oh, we got to get a meaningful receiver to compete. I mean, Carolina's a bad team, but he's caught 12 passes this year, barely involved. But he's got some talent, obviously. When you're the 39th pick in the draft, he was, you generally have some physical gifts, and he's big, and he's 220, 4'4", 6 guy. So they're just taking a shot on a raw talent, and hopefully they can develop him.
Yeah, we'll see what they're able to do with that. We'll have Mike Gill coming up in a little bit, as you just heard Johnny Mack say. He needs the link. I got him the link. We'll have Mike Gill coming up, and then in hour number 2, we'll have Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG, from Bleeding Green Nation. Looking forward to talking to both of those guys today. John, has the Eagles defense, I think it's safe to say they've probably exceeded everybody's expectations to
Oh my
this point.
God!
Maybe not. I mean, yeah.
Well, if anybody had bigger expectations, than
Yeah,
that,
well, that's
hey,
why I didn't want to speak for you, which is why I hedged the bet. But glad to hear you're on the same page. You think they can keep up this pace? They're playing really
no,
good
I
football.
don't.
Okay.
I don't. But can they be good? Yeah. But this pace, no. I mean, they've been part of it's opponents. They've been playing bad opponents, and they've taken advantage of it. But that's common sense. That
Yeah.
should be baked in for everybody. You play better against poorer opponents, and you're going to have a tougher time against better opponents. It's what, if you go back to 2022, I never understood that. People can't understand that. Yeah. The Chiefs are tougher than Cincinnati, or, Baltimore, and certainly everybody's tougher than the Giants, maybe with the exception of the Panthers. And, the Browns aren't having a good season, but they've taken advantage of all of this. And that's just what you're supposed to do. That's a positive thing. But yeah, to expect them to play the rest of the season like they played these last 4 games, yeah, that's probably a little bit unrealistic, I would say. Well, you have another easier route, I would say, than expected, with Cooper Rush expected to start for the Cowboys. And Mike's grabbing some coffee, and then he'll be pop in. But they're doing what they're supposed to do. There's nothing wrong with that. You should
Yeah.
be
No,
lauded for that, because there's so many teams that play down to the competition, don't bring their A game, and the Eagles have been stifling. And one of the disappointing things of the nonsense of how much we discussed decisions that didn't succeed. Yeah, we didn't talk about the players, and specifically when you talk about the players, for the second straight week, Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, both of them, were off the charts. Off the charts. I mean, did anybody see that coming? For all the talk, and the 2 best players, film grade PFF wise, for the second straight week for the Philadelphia Eagles, Zach Bond and Kobe Dean. 2 weeks in a row. And this is a team that has struggled at linebacker for many years. And when they do have good linebacker play, it tends to be linebacker play that.
I mean,
For
John, I'll
whatever
bring it
reason,
back to the offseason. We thought this team could be. We thought these linebackers could be a bottom 5,
I think
bottom 3
everybody
unit.
did.
No, I'm not.
Everybody had
I'm
that.
not saying we were wrong, but that was the expectation, and they are so far above that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, 2 best players. Everybody thinks Saquon had the best game in the history of the world. 2 best players by far. Zach Ball and Nakobe Dean. By far, from play to play. Again, that consistency from play to play to play. Just, they've been unbelievable. And then you have Jalen Carter, who's playing at a high level. Cooper DeJean has been unbelievable.
Yeah, he has.
Quinyon Mitchell has been just rock solid all year. As expected, Isaiah Rodgers held up against Jacksonville, which was a positive. Reed Blankenship played well. It was one of, he had been in a little bit of a slump. I would say the only guy not playing up to expectations or not exceeding expectations on that defense would be CJ. CJ Gardner-Johnson. A lot of people will say Jordan Davis, but for the reasons we've discussed ad nauseum, I'm not necessarily on that same page. But a lot of people will say him and Bryce Huff, I should say. Bryce Huff as well. But for the most part, that defense it's been wow. You got to give Vic a ton of credit.
Yeah,
And that's his expertise, linebackers. So maybe we didn't give enough credit to him on that because he can look at it. And that was, Vic always says something interesting every week to me. And his most interesting thing this week was he was asked about moving Zach Ball into off-ball linebacker. And if he, worried about what other people thought of him because they didn't look at him as an off-ball linebacker. And Vic's like so secure. And he's like, essentially, he's like, no, I don't give a crap what anybody else thinks. And he got a little dig in. A lot of coaches don't have that kind of self-confidence. And they'll look around and say, what am I missing? And they don't have the confidence in themselves to do those types of things. So, yeah, you can't say enough good things about that defense.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's get to our first commercial break. Before I do that, though, Johnny Mac, check this out. This is Paul Blome. This is who won the Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway yesterday. He's over in the UK, so I got to ship the jersey out to the UK. He drops a big old super chat. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Congrats on winning the jersey, and thank you for your support. John, he's been a member on JAKIB for 26 months. So this is no new member looking to capitalize on my giveaways. He has been supporting for a while. So big thanks to you, Paul. Congrats on winning the jersey. He says, well chuffed with the Saquon jersey. Thank you. Extending Zach Baum would be better than any deadline move. They need cap space. A lot of extensions upcoming. Go Birds. What do you think, Johnny Mac? Baum extension incoming?
Yeah, I think it's incoming at some point. But they don't need cap space.
They're not going to TJ Edwards this though, John, are they? Don't tell me that.
No, I don't think they are.
I hope not.
But I think part of that is Zach's part as well. Like, I think there's going to be some loyalty from Zach as well that maybe he takes a little bit undervalue because, this is the team that gave him the chance. And if he goes to another team, he might be in the same crappy situation. That doesn't see him the same way that Vic sees him. So I think you have that in your back pocket as well.
Yeah, good stuff, Paul. Thank you, man, and appreciate the support of the channel, and congrats on the jersey. I'll email you the updates with that today. The Kelly Green coming your way, my friend. Appreciate it. Say Quads checks in. The offense and defense are progressing how we all hope. This is going to piss J-Mac off. J-Mac, have you seen or heard enough around the water cooler to believe Nick's situational decisions will improve? We are lucky that was the Jaguars.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of water cooler talk that people just don't understand why Eagles fans can't understand how important being aggressive has been to the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the water cooler talk from people inside the building. They are But they are flummoxed by the reaction. Flummoxed.
Let's get to our commercial break. We'll get to Mike Gill. Looking forward to talking to Mike Gill coming up next here on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll be right back in 3 minutes with Mike Gill on the other side.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Score and save in Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365, following a big day in American politics, and we will not talk about politics here. Joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, my man?
I'm doing all right. I'm ready for what should be an interesting Dallas week. It doesn't seem to have the same flair.
No juice with Cooper Rush. No juice.
Useless, in this Dallas week.
Kellen Moore likes him, though. Last time Cooper Rush had to play, he had to start 5 games and he won 4 of them.
Yeah.
And Kellen Moore was there, obviously, as the offensive coordinator at the time. So he's very, very familiar with him. The one game he lost was to the Eagles.
I think he was actually 5-1.
Was he 5-1? Maybe.
I think he was 5-1. I saw that yesterday, that graphic, and I was saying, "Oh, maybe this is an upgrade." Now, listen, I remember that time where people were actually wondering whether or not.
Yeah. And then he threw 3 interceptions against the Eagles.
Yeah, he was bad that night. Yeah. I mean, this Dallas team's a disaster so far. I mean, but keep in mind, I don't know what their injury situation is. They've been playing without Parsons, Dexter Lawrence on defense. That does change a little bit for them in terms of pass rush. They're still not a team that can stop the run very well. I don't know if Parsons is going to play this week, where that stands, but they just had this team. I've been very I don't want to say high on the Cowboys, but I've been someone who's constantly the last kind of like 3 years of this Eagles-Cowboys flipping back and forth, who has kind of said, look, they're the more talented team. They're just poorly run, poorly coached, and that's really been the difference. Well, they're poorly run. See, they're poorly run, but they do draft well. They find talent.
Yes.
They just don't approach when to re-sign them, when to give them the contract. They do a terrible job there. I've been trying to think too. I don't remember. I mean, you look at the Yankees, because most Cowboys fans are Yankees fans, so they can relate.
I'm a Yankees fan. I'm not a Cowboys fan.
I'm just saying. I mean, I think
that is a
you
major
tell me that's not true.
No, that's what people just follow front runners. But even
there's a lot of people who are fans of both, so they can relate. So the Yankees go out and get top level free agents. They are a team that gets the big and spends. The Cowboys, I cannot think of a free agent that they brought in of any impact at all. Like, you would think this Cowboys team, they don't do it at all. They draft well, and then they let the guys play the contracts out, and then they wait too long to re-sign them. Then they overpay for them, and they get themselves in this cycle constantly. It's unbelievable that they do this, and they have a team in their division that is probably their main rival, debatable, I guess, and they don't look and say, man, what does Philadelphia do that we're doing that we can maybe try to emulate to get out of this cycle of mess that we're constantly in? And, man, this is going to be an interesting, because now they're going to be bad enough that they might be a top 5 team, and they just signed the quarterback. So what do you do if you're one of the worst 5 teams? And this is great.
Yeah, from the standpoint of and you're right about Will McClay. He's one of the best personnel guys in the NFL. That's what's kind of, bloated the Cowboys boat. They've been a great regular season team and then failed in the playoffs. Now this year they're terrible in the regular season. Now part of that is injuries. Let's be honest. I mean, when you don't have Micah Parsons, you don't have DeMarcus Lawrence, you're not going to be as good.
No.
And they also had, Deron Bland, who was, an all-pro corner last year, had not been playing. He might play this week. Trayvon Diggs is hurt again. So they have a lot of talent still on, I would say, on the defensive side. Offensively, boy, man, they've been a disaster. They got one good player, CeeDee Lamb.
Yes, the running situation's awful.
Running back situation. The offensive line, which has usually been a strength. Zach Martin's going to Hall of Fame, but he's older.
They drafted 2 offensive linemen. Hasn't worked out. They have no running game at all. The 2 backs, I mean, Elliott's suspended.
Elliott doesn't show up to team meetings. Yeah, they're a mess. They're an absolute
They did make a trade yesterday, though, something the Eagles didn't do.
Yeah, Jonathan, we were talking about it, man. What was the reaction on your show to when you see the Lions get a big name and you see the Commanders get a big name and the Eagles stand pat? What was the reaction?
Well, the initial reaction is, well, everybody else did something. Why didn't we? But we had kind of talked about it for 2 weeks leading up to it. You, my Football at 4 segment, and anybody, where were the Eagles going to add someone that was going to usurp someone that's on the field? The only spot you could say was at a pass rusher. So I asked you yesterday, John, if you remember one of my questions to you was there a deal that was made? This happens in baseball a lot. Like, hey, this team went out and got a pitcher for this. Could your GM have done that? So could the Eagles have made the same deal to Cleveland? Why couldn't they have called Cleveland first and made that level of deal to get Smith? Would that have helped them out enough to say?
I think it might have, but their situation was so much more complicated than Detroit's. Detroit loses Aiden Hutchinson. There's an obvious need, an obvious spot.
Well, but Cleveland doesn't care about where the obvious spot.
No, I'm saying, but it makes the urgency for the Lions easier, greater from their standpoint.
True, but Cleveland, do the Eagles not look at their situation and say, we really, like 3 weeks ago, and say, even though we're getting to the quarterback, we really need to get something.
Well, but it's more complicated for the Eagles because of Bryce Huff and I get people don't want to hear the business part of it, but the business part of it is real. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is the Lions had an open spot and the Eagles didn't. the Eagles would have had to make 2 moves to pull that off, essentially. Because if you're getting Zadarius Smith, you're playing him. And that means if you're playing him, somebody isn't playing. And that would most likely be Bryce
and
Huff.
that's what we had discussed on my show a lot was, okay, there is, just because there were some hypotheticals, they bring in Budda Baker. Okay, are you really bringing in Budda Baker and then benching Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, exactly.
You're paying him a lot of money. And he's not playing all that well for that money. So that was one. The other one, there was one, Josie Jewell, a linebacker. Okay, you're going to bring him in? Are you benching Dean or Bond in that situation?
Oh,
probably not. So, and our point was, is Budda Baker better? Yeah, he probably is better. But better so much so that you're going to bench one of the guys you already paid for. No.
I don't see
Same with linebacker. Is Josie Jewell better? Maybe equal, maybe. But not enough so that you were going to bench one of the guys that you got and don't pay all that much money for one that you could extend.
Yeah, and Howie's not trading a pick for marginal improvement. Howie loves his picks.
And listen, Zander, they've gone down this road. They brought in Kevin Byard last year. That looked like a clear upgrade, and it did not work. They brought in Robert Quinn the year before, and that looked like, wow, this is a guy. Robert Quinn had 18 sacks the year before. It wasn't like it was 3 years before. It was the year before. And he was cooked. So I think he was at a point where, listen, I brought in these older guys and tried to stick them in the middle of the season, and it hasn't worked for us. Now, on the flip side of things, for the people out there who were complaining, I don't know one NFL trade that has happened where that trade was the difference maker. Now, you could make an argument that Kansas City getting to Hopkins might help them out and be a difference maker for them. But I don't know that there's a defensive player that gets at it. Remember a couple of years ago, the Niners get Chase Young, and people are like, oh, my God, they sent Chase Young to the Niners. Well, now they're looking to send him to his 4th team. So I don't know that there's a trade that really impacts this team because of other than if you were ready to say, and I know a lot of people chatting and watching and viewing and listening, you're done with Huff. The only thing would have been if you were ready to rip that contract up, eat the money, and then get a marginal replacement. This would have been like the level of saying, hey, we're going to go get a Derek Barnett rotational player, and you weren't going to like him anyway. Don't worry.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike, I want to ask you about just your take. I mean, I know we're moving on to Dallas, but just what were your takeaways from the game that went on Sunday? Obviously, there was a lot of controversy that came out of it. Just your overall takeaways from that game.
Well, I know I said the easy thing is to be the guy that comes in and rants and raves about Nick Sirianni and how horrible he almost cost him the game.
Low-hanging fruit, Mike Gill.
Right. The fan in you watching that game, I totally understand. I have gotten to a point sadly, maybe, in my career where, look, the world and the game of football has evolved, and I have evolved with it. I would take the points in almost every situation, but I do understand that that's not the game anymore. Nick Sirianni, if he doesn't go for it when the ball's on the 1 yard line for 2, if he doesn't go for it when the analytics say go, he has to answer to somebody for that. Why didn't you go for it when that card says go? Now, you might say, well, it's still his fault because he does agree with them. That's why he has this job. When they interview him and they say, Nick, 4th down and 3, ball at the 22. What are you doing? And he says, I go for it. You're hired. That's what they want in their head coach. So, yes, his philosophies are aligned. But guess what? If it's not Nick Sirianni making that decision, it's somebody else. The Eagles want him to make that decision because they feel the best version of themselves is an aggressive version of themselves. Why? That's how they won their only Super Bowl. You saw Doug Peterson on Sunday. Why is Doug Peterson not here? A lot of it is, well, he wanted this guy to be the play caller. Because Doug lost his aggression. And he probably had to keep answering, Doug, why are you not aggressive? We're not as good. No, you need to be aggressive if we're going to be the best version of ourselves. That's why Nick does it. And you can almost see him on the sidelines, the confliction he has, knowing he's pacing up and down that sideline, knowing I'm going to get hell for this, but if I don't do it, I'm going to get hell upstairs. So I better go for it here.
Yeah.
You almost feel bad for him in a sense. I mean, not bad for him. I think he wants to go for it. I think that's his beliefs, and that's why he has this job. But the fans have to understand, if he doesn't go for it, he's got hell to pay for not going for it in those situations. Now, generally, if they execute, we're all doing backflips and we're all doing another, whatever you're doing on that party moment when they get it on fourth down, and he's not getting credit for that. As he said, he came out and said it. No one's giving me credit when we get it. And he's right. It's just another footnote in a game. But if you watch games on a Sunday, the Eagles played at 4 o'clock the other day, so I got a chance to sit and watch at 1 o'clock, and this is going on everywhere. I mean, most of these good teams, they are going for it all the time. And people are saying they're poorly coached. They might be poorly coached in 1995 or 2005 or 2015. But in 2024, this is what the good teams do. Detroit, if Dan Campbell was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday, he would have done the same things that Nick Sirianni did. Maybe they would have converted. Maybe they wouldn't have. But I don't hear anybody complaining about Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell's aggressiveness got them to the NFC Championship game. It also lost it for them. Those are the battles you have to deal with when that's your organization's philosophy. So you want to be mad at Nick by proxy, but really it's the organization's philosophy.
Great take.
Yeah. What do you mean great take, Zander? It's maybe Mike said it better than me, but it's exactly the same as my take.
Am I more articulate than John?
Yes.
On that?
You
Well,
are
no,
more
that's
articulate.
what I mean, but it's all
You did it
organizational.
better. Bravo, Mike. You did it better.
Well, and listen, I had, I'm on text chains with my buddies, and I say, I will say, I think a lot of the reactions to Nick doing this, take the points. Some of it is tied to gambling. My buddy has the over, and the Eagles don't take the points.
That's a good point. That's
Mike,
a good point as well.
The ones I have a problem with are
That's a good point.
if it can extend it and make it another possession game, I take the easy play. Like the point after the 16, when you're up 16. Why go for 2 there when the point after gives you a 17-point lead, which makes it a 3-score game? Those are the ones I have a problem with. The 4th and 3 at the 22, I'm very used to the Eagles going for it there. I know they're going for it, and I don't have an issue with it, but I think there should be some situational.
I agree with
there's none of it.
Not going to be in the second quarter.
Yeah,
no freaking way in the second quarter.
Do you remember the Eagles were playing? The Eagles were playing Monday night. Who were they playing? Tampa on Monday night, and there was almost a similar situation. 4th down 3. They're at the 22. They were moving down to the right end zone, and they went for it. And on the screen, Aikman said it. He said, I wouldn't go for it here, and they put a green light up on the screen that says go. And they have a graphic now that tells you when the analytics say to go for it. And in that moment, it was up on the screen. And it said, the analytics say go for it here. So 4th down and 3 at the 22, the Eagles are going to go for it, probably regardless of time score in the first half. The second half, that might evolve and change. I don't know if the analytics change on down and distance and yard line based on time and score of a game.
It's different in the fourth quarter. Yeah,
right.
It's much different in the fourth quarter. Second quarter, especially against a Bo. Remember, the Eagles have a ton of confidence as well. They think they're really good, and they are really good. It's just a matter of how good. So
the big thing is. And, Zander, I agree with you. I take, you've seen teams do this all year, though. They kick the extra point. There's a penalty on the extra point. Then they take the point off the board, and then they go for 2. That chart says if that ball's on the 1-yard line, you go for it every single time. I mean, it's almost to the point now where teams might get a penalty on purpose to make you have to go for 2 on the extra point kick because they're saying, hey, we'll take our chance in taking the point off the board because you're going to take it off the board. But every team in this league, I watch games all the time, and they all do the same thing. They, very few of them.
Well, and people would want to make these extremes. Obviously, if you tie the game late in the fourth quarter, you're kicking the extra point, to go ahead. There are instances you're not going to do it late in the game, even if you're given a free yard. In the second quarter, the Philadelphia Eagles, No, they're going.
Their philosophy is we don't want to be up 2 scores. We want to be up 4 scores. Darius Slay said on his podcast, no, John, I don't listen to Darius Slay's podcast. My producer does. And he got me the audio that you love to hear. And Darius Slay said, we love it because we want to take other teams' souls. We don't want to just go up 2 scores. We want to blow these teams out. We want to take their souls. And how do you blow a team out? You got to go up 3 scores early, not 2 scores.
Oh, they like to win outside the margins. And if you're giving them a free yard, they're going to take it and they're going to say, we're going to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
And typically they do take advantage of it.
Now, that said, I am not a fan of the analytics. I don't like the fact that 4th and 3, you just automatically go. I think in this game on Sunday, like I equate it to, I coach youth baseball. When I see the team come up to bat and they go around the lineup twice, I get a pretty good feel of, all right, this team can't score 5 runs against us. So you manage the game differently. You're watching now. I get it. It's an NFL game, and these are NFL teams. But you're watching Jacksonville, and you're saying, if we get to 17, now we're up 3. They're not good enough. So I'm just going to keep tacking points on because this team is really not good enough to catch us. That's where I don't agree with the analytical philosophy of, hey, we're going to be aggressive here. Okay, well, guess what? You're at a point in this game where you just take points and keep stretching your lead against a team that really isn't all that good.
No, and it's even more important against good teams. like if it was Detroit, you want as many points as humanly possible. With Jacksonville, you can make the bigger argument, as you said, that you don't really need it. But
John Gill said a little bit of both of what we were saying.
Yeah, but for the key part is it's organizational, and if you fire Nick Sirianni, your next
I agree with the organization, Zander. Yeah. I say I understand it. It's like anything. You get something, and then instead of making an irrational reaction, I want to get more information before I make.
Well, the best thing you said, and I've said it, but you said it much better than me. So kudos again, Mike. Is that the game has evolved? It's not. It's not the same as it was. So the take the points crowd, the run the football all the time crowd, they're behind they're in a different generation of football. It's not that I like it. It's just the reality of the situation. The game has changed.
Yeah.
I often talk about, Zander can tell, I often talk to you about how ugly the game has become, how dumbed down the game has become. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm also a realist. And as the old guy, I shouldn't be the open-minded one. I say it all the time.
Well, I'm 47. Where am I on this? Because I don't like the game. I don't like the game, the way it's going.
Yeah.
But I have to at least make some attempt to understand it before I become an irrational jackass and just start yelling things out when I don't have any context. The context is sad. I agree, Zander. I don't like the context of where the game is going, but I have to at least acknowledge and understand it, right?
And it's ironic because whether it was Todd Bowles on Monday night, the last 3 games, opposing coaches against the Eagles played it too conservatively and it bit their ass. Doug didn't go for 4th and 3. Plus, we're looking in the press box. We're like, what are you doing, Doug? Bit him in the ass. Zach Taylor, 4th and 2, inside the 10. Chance to make it a 14-3 game. It lays up. He took the points with the 27-yard field goal. Brutal decision.
Well, the whole game, Tampa, everybody's yelling at them for taking the points. You see the irony here? They're getting yelled at for taking the points. We're saying take the points.
Yeah. And in the same game, these are Brian Daboll the week before. You're up against it as Brian Daboll. You have a chance to score any points. You go for it. No, he's laying up. What brutal.
Yeah, see, that's where I don't understand. These bad teams, they can be a little bit more reckless. And yet they're the ones that are so close to the vest. And guess what? That's why you're 2-7. Because
where's the line, Mike? Where is the line between aggressiveness?
Here's the line. I can tell you where the line is. It's easier to it's easier to explain in the post-game press conference when you lay up.
Chris Long was talking about this on his podcast. Why owners hire safe head coaches?
Yeah.
And I guess it's just, the way the organizations think and what they, the Eagles are a team that wants to be aggressive. They want to be ahead of the curve. What did famously Jeffrey Lurie said when he hired Chip? I want to be 5 years ahead of being 5 years ahead. So he hires Chip Kelly and then he fires him because he said, well, I'm not 5 years ahead of where I want it to be.
And I think I said on your show, the irony of all this is that Nick is kind of a firewall. Like he will occasionally, not a lot, but he will occasionally go against an organizational decision. And he will occasionally say, you know what? I'm not going to be over aggressive.
Well, how many get out of free jail cards has he had? When he paces up and down and he's like, oh, is that him saying, I have 3 get out of jail free cards left?
Yeah, that might be what he's saying.
Maybe.
Mike, what I said was the line between aggressive and recklessness. I mean, don't you think they toed that with 16 to 17? That's the only – I'm not even arguing the whole aggressive thing. I get it. They're going to be aggressive.
I would say they don't think it's reckless because they're already up 2 scores, and they have the mindset that I just laid out. This team's not good enough to catch us. Now, on that day, they almost did, but their mindset is kind of – I saw them go through the lineup twice. They ain't scoring twice on our defense, so let's go up 3 scores here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, they didn't. They opted to go for 2, but the point after would have been up 3 scores.
So
to be perfectly honest, they're not.
There might be a little bit of arrogance in their aggression at times.
They're not thinking about 2 scores, 3 scores in the second quarter. They're not even fathoming that in. They gave us a free yard. Take it.
Yeah.
Take it. That's what they're thinking.
The thing I would, the 4th and inches play, just run the damn tush push. I don't understand.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. That's the one. And I have no problem with going for it. I have no problem with that decision, but that's the one I don't agree. They kind of wavered. They kind of said, we're not having success with it. Let's go to something different. It didn't work. That I have a problem. That was 4th and inches. I mean,
the funny part is, like, I asked yesterday on my show, I asked this question. Nick Sirianni, 40-19. If he wins this week, he will be 41-19, which is, other than Matt LaFleur, will be the best.
Sources say that's pretty good, by the way.
Yeah. What is the disconnect with Nick Sirianni? Why do people not believe that he is a good coach? Why do they quit? Like, what is it? I'm trying to figure this out, because he seems like this guy that would be someone that Eagle fans like. You got this young guy, he's jarving with the fans.
Well, I think it comes down to no matter who the coach is, they're not going to like him.
Well, that's when we
I think
bring
he is
out
a good coach. I think the organization makes him look like a fucking asshole sometimes when they say, if you get a yard, no matter what the game is, no matter what the score is, what the circumstance is, you go for 2. I think it makes you look dumb. There's no situational, awareness there.
Take it. He has to be the one that takes it. No question about it.
Now,
you're
I'm going to go.
Right.
I'm going to go to politics. The Eagles are sort of like the elitist politician. Like, they don't give a shit. They got guys from Harvard and they don't give a shit. Like, they're not going to dumb it down and explain why you do that. People might not like that, but that's their feeling.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do it because it doesn't make logical sense. They do it because of the exact opposite. Over a large sample size, it's an advantage, and that's what they're playing. You're playing the odds. You're always playing the odds. And there's no debate. There's no debate. There's not like as Mike points out, when they put up the stupid thing with, I always love when they call it analytics, like he's got a corner office and they put it up there and says green. There's no debate. They run these numbers backwards and forward. There's no debates. It's better odds if you do what they do.
Yeah. It's like the banker guy on Deal or No Deal. He's sitting up in a room on the phone with like a screen that you can't see what he looks like, calling down to the Eagles. This is a go for it situation. No, they have it all mapped out.
Yeah.
here's the way. So to go back to your original question, Zander, Monday, I'm on live. The first thing most people are doing is ranting and raving. The coach almost lost in the game. He's going to kill his team. We played a bite for John from Dan Orlovsky, who I think is a pretty level-headed guy.
I got a great quote. I can't say. I got a great quote from an Eagles guy about Dan Orlovsky.
Right, and he says, Orlovsky says, if Nakobe Dean doesn't make that catch, Nick Sirianni doesn't get out of that locker room.
He's getting fired. Oh,
he's getting fired.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I would surmise that if Nick doesn't make the decisions he made, he's more likely to be fired.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You're 100%.
How about that? If he doesn't make the decisions he made in that game, he's more likely to be fired.
He's not getting fired either way.
He's not getting fired either way. But
I don't want to
say. The Eagles' mindset, and this is for the big picture, is if we're going to beat the Detroit Lions, we can't be passive. They're better than we are, or we're equals or close, or maybe. But if we don't be aggressive against that level of team, we're not going to get where we want to go. So they were taking every advantage on the way there. Sometimes they might fail. 4th and 3, maybe we didn't get it against Jacksonville. But if we keep doing that, when it push comes to shove and we're playing the Lions, we've run 4th and 3 enough times in that moment that when we need it the most, it will be there for us. And that's the way they think. So that's why it's not second quarter, just take the points for them. It's 4th and 3. We got to do this against Detroit in the NFC Championship game. We need to run that play right now and practice it. And that's their mindset. It's a big picture thing against what the fans are. I want to win this week, and I want to win 40-10. And there's your difference.
Yeah. At Mike Gill show, the better communicator than me, so send your hate.
Well, he didn't make me feel like a dumbass for saying taking another point isn't always a bad decision.
No, but I'm pretty confused at like I've had this stance since Monday. People are saying like I've flip-flopped all over the place. I don't agree with it. I just understand it. There's a big difference.
I agree.
I don't like it personally, but I'm a big baseball guy. Rob Thompson gets hammered. The problem is most people blame Rob Thompson. These are all organizational philosophies. The problem is the fans, we all learned a game at a certain age of our lives. And that's what our mind tells us. That's what I learned the game because my Little League coach was a great man and he taught me to lay a bunt down. Well, that Little League coach's philosophies are now out the window. You too have to change your mindset. I don't like the way baseball is played, but that's the way the game is played now.
I say it all the time.
Rob Thompson, who's like when Bryce Harper, people were going nuts the day that he didn't pinch hit for somebody. The doc or whoever's in charge says to Rob Thompson, Bryce Harper's not available today. You're not playing him. So he doesn't pinch hit. JT Realmuto, you're not hitting today. You're taking the entire – and people will say, well, what's so big about one pinch hit? Doesn't matter. That's what he was told. I can't use him today. So we have to understand that these head coaches who back in like the 80s when we all learned the game, we perceived that they were the be-all, end-all of every decision. It's not like that anymore. Now, we might not like that. We want the head coach to make all the decisions, use his gut, and it's his way or the highway. Sadly, that ain't the sports world we're living in. And if that's the sports world you want, I got news for you. You're going to be angry and disappointed when people make decisions like this.
Going to be perpetually angry for the rest of my life.
It ain't coming back. Yeah, it ain't coming back. It ain't going backward. I'll tell you that. Especially because it's been successful. It ain't going backward.
How many times when it's unsuccessful until we go back?
Till we go back to take the pool. You're a long time, man. They do not believe in that. They do not believe in that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, because the league is everybody's shifting that way. How many times, Andrew, you watch a game, they kick the extra point, and then there's a penalty, and the ball moves up to the 1 yard line, and then the team goes for it. It's almost every single time. You don't even think about it anymore. They're going to go for 2, right?
Well, yeah, you're trying to take advantage of a situation.
The
Which
good teams anyway.
And by the way, it's not. By the way, it's not a big deal. I mean, the amount, like I said, the amount of time we've done talking about this, and we're not talking about how well Zach Ball's playing, and how well Nakobe Dean's playing, and how well Cooper DeJean's playing. At the end of the day, our best commenter yesterday, I put that on X, was the one who said, "Hey, dumbasses," and I'm talking about myself. It's an outlier. Move on. First of all, they're always successful with the tush push. Now, what you should really be worried about is why weren't they successful? And by the way, part of that might have been, well, they were, but they didn't call it on the field, at least on one of them.
Yeah. And by the way, the other thing is, and we say that all the teams are doing it. That's because they're emulating the Eagles, by the way. The Eagles aren't following other teams. The other teams are following what the Eagles did when they won their Super Bowl. They said, look at this team. They're aggressive. They're going for it in times that you're not supposed to. And other teams started to kind of acquiesce to what the Eagles' mindset was. And
biggest play in the Super Bowl 52, everybody's going to say either the Philly special or Brandon strip sack.
Yeah, but I hate that comparison because
the biggest play was the 4th and 1 conversion.
That's such a bad comparison, though, because that's a moment that you make a tough decision like that. Week 9 versus the Jags when you're up 16. I mean,
I'm just talking to the point of Mike. Mike is correct when he says the Eagles were ahead of the curve, and you would think the fan base actually would take some pride in that. And everybody else is copying them, and they think they should go back to 1985. Not everybody. Not every.
The Eagles are leading people to slaughter. I mean, Sam says Andy Reid hasn't shifted that way. He's looking to three-peat.
Andy Reid's the most innovative offensive
Andy
coach.
Reid is very aggressive.
Yeah, but he's not taking 2 every single time to not make it a 3-score game, guys. He's not.
Well, what was Andy Reid's biggest criticism while he was here? The clock management, the management of these games.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that on Monday's show, not on Birds 365 on our afternoon show. Maybe Nick is, going through the same arc that Doug or Andy went through, where he's learning how to manage.
By the way, one of the things about Nick that I think is kind of, where everybody rips Nick and people don't know what Nick does. Very few times are we talking about poor clock management, use of timeouts. Like, he has a pretty good handle on managing the time and the score and the clock throughout his tenure here. That's been something that we don't sit here and say, what the hell are you doing with the timeouts or the clock? I mean, every once in a while, but Andy was almost weekly. That is something that Nick generally does a pretty good. But Andy, I don't know. You watch them play; they go for 2. They'll go for 2. They go for it on 4th down a lot.
I agree with that sentiment that Andy Reid is conservative.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he's conservative, John. It's saying he's not going for the blanket of aggressiveness.
Well, I find it hard to believe.
Every single situation, no matter what the circumstance calls for. That's the difference. I'm not even saying I don't want to be aggressive.
First of all, I find it very hard to believe. I don't have Andy Reid's 2-point conversion history in front of me, so I can't speak intelligently on that. But first of all, I've said consistently, it's not blankets. It's blanket in the second quarter. I said, to say it's blanket means if you're down 6 and you score in the 4th quarter with 15 seconds left, you're going to go for 2 if they jump off sides. No, they're going to kick the extra point every single time. That's blanket. So I don't know how many times I have to say this.
I mean, I would hope that they would do that. I mean, shit. I mean, come on, you're pulling an outlier. No shit, they would do that.
You're pulling an outlier. You're calling it a blanket assessment.
No, there was 2 times in the game they could have extended the possessions and made it a 3-possession game the first time. Then they could have made it a 2-possession game.
So focused. It's the second fucking quarter.
It wasn't the second quarter on the last time, John. No, it was not. They were up by 6, 22-16. They could have made it a 2-score game.
We have spent so much.
Yeah, 22-16. That was one where you're saying, yeah, I agree with you there. 22-16 at that stage of the game. Making it. And by the way, you're playing without AJ Brown. It's like late third quarter, I think, when they scored there.
It's and Nick also spoke about, which I got into a little bit yesterday, the confidence of the play and the confidence of the players. And that's another thing you and I have talked about, Mike. You know, you got all these people who think that this is the greatest roster in football. This is the best offensive roster. And then they have no confidence in these fucking players to execute.
Yeah. Listen, and that's why they try a 58-yard field goal when you're saying, okay, you probably should punt it, make them go the field. Their offense is kind of limited. They don't have timeouts left. Instead, he says, I have confidence in my kicker. Let's kick a 58-yard field goal.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly what I was talking about. And I said, I would have punted there because I've seen a few things from Jake where he's not been as good this year as last year. But I brought that up. I said, man, if you're Nick Sirianni, that's different. I don't have to worry about the player and about
that's where, like, I understand the organization's aggressiveness and fine. That's who they are. That's what they want to be. But to go back to Zander's point, sometimes your aggressiveness can be deemed reckless. You have to pick and choose when you want to be aggressive and when you don't. I don't like that you're just simply saying the card says do this. And I hope that's not what they do. You know, maybe he does have convictions in some of these decisions. Well, 22-16, you get the extra point and you go up 2 scores at that stage of the game. There's not enough time for a team like Jacksonville. At some point, you got to stop saying we want to blow this team away and just beat them. You've had your chance to blow them away. You haven't been able to do it.
Oh, no, it was a very disappointing, performance. But even that, I mean, there's only so much you can do. And that's why the cliche of, control what you can control, sometimes things aren't going to fall your way. Let's be honest. That was whatever the NFL believes, that was a very convoluted explanation of the Saquon Barkley fumble.
Yeah.
And I do not understand it. Now, I'm not going to complain about it because I never complain about officiating, but that's a bad break. And if that play doesn't happen, they're not even in the game. So sometimes you get bad breaks, and that's why they're in the game. And it went the way it went. It went the way it went. I wouldn't have allowed Jake Elliott to kick that field goal. But again, I don't have to deal with Jake Elliott's competence. I'm just talking about in a vacuum in the moment.
Maybe if he used him for the 40-yard field goal earlier, he'd have more confidence.
Well, that's another thing. And when Zander first brought that up on Monday, I'm like, yeah, maybe that's a good point. That's a good point. But
by the way, he's my fantasy kicker.
43-yard field goal
left and right by this Jake Elliott here. Yeah. Come on, I'm out there yelling. Come on, put him in the game.
Mike, you got to drop him if he's on your fan. I don't do fantasy, but you got to drop him.
He made a 43-yard field goal in the game. And by the way, he kicked an extra point, but they took it off the board to take advantage of a penalty. So he had been kicking. He had been kicking. And it was close, and he missed the kick. But that's sort of what happens.
Hey, listen, sometimes if Nick didn't do these things, a 6-2 team would be a lot less boring to talk about.
Well, that's true too. But it would be nice.
The guy who does content every day. Yeah, that's how I viewed that too.
Well, people ask me all the time, like, "Oh, the Eagles are winning. That's got to be great." And I'm like, what's the best for what I do is if the team is like 4-4, and like some weeks they look good, and some people believe in them, and some weeks they don't look good, and people don't believe them. Now we have a team that's 6-2, and people still don't believe in them, and for whatever reason, fine. Do they feel like a 6-2 team? I don't know. I asked.
I'm not going to lie. I didn't feel like.
I mean, when I guess I don't understand the thought process. Like when
people like, I'm not. This is the NFL. I don't really care about you look at all these stats. Everything's a 1-score game. Blah blah. Yeah. People like the aesthetics of a victory. 35-10. It's the guys that say in a preseason game, I need to see a good drive out of this team. Are you thinking about that preseason drive in August now? Of course you're not. Well, maybe some people do. But It's that guy that's every drive is the most important drive of the year, the third quarter of a preseason game.
I guess I don't understand the 22-16 thing. Like, I don't understand. Are you revisiting the prior failures at 20 because the game turned to 22-16? Like that, I don't get. Like, what are you expecting Nick to do in a revisionist standpoint? It's a 22-0 game. Okay. So they fail twice, right? And then Jacksonville scores. They have the one good drive, the one really good drive they had in the entire game. They score and make it 22-8 with horrific coverage and the 2-point conversion. And then it's the Barkley play that turns it into 22-16, which again, horrific coverage on the 2-point conversion. It was like Super Bowl level coverage on both of them. I have no idea what the Eagles defense was doing. They were great other than that. And it becomes a 22-16 game. So I get, that's the point. I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, oh, if they would have went for it before, they wouldn't have been. I mean, are you counting on, are you trying to say, hey, we're going to fail on 2-point conversion? Oh, the officials are going to buck up a fumble. I don't get that thought process.
No, I mean,
like,
there it's late in the third, John. So I guess can I just explain to you where I think the logic comes from, at least for me? Make it a 2-score game, and it lowers their odds of coming back in the football game. You have Saquon, you have a great running game. Eagles are going to get the ball back. You can milk the clock out. It's a 2-score game. You effectively put your opponent on ice and make them have to play great football, which is, I don't like their odds of doing that.
Well, why?
You went for 2 there and you kept it a 1-score game.
Why don't you just say, hey, tighten up on the 2-point conversion? You know, maybe not let receivers run free. Tighten up on the 2-point conversion. Maybe not let receivers run free. Hey, Saquon, be a little bit more careful with the football. Why is that?
The 22-16 was the field goal, John. That's when people wanted them to take the field goal, and they made the shitty tush push call away from the tush push.
Yeah, that was the fourth.
I don't even have a huge. I mean, I would have taken the field goal, but I'm not going to shit on them for it.
I thought you were going back to the revisionist aspect of it. The 4th and 1, yeah, the 4th and inches, yeah, I have a problem with the play they called. I don't have a problem with this.
I do too, but I also could argue. I mean, you could also easily argue, or at least understand why someone would say, "Well, go up 2 there, go up 9."
I can't. 4th and inches. This team. Have you watched this team for the past?
No, I know, but isn't that's a part of the situation?
That's a 48-yard field goal in that situation. So they're saying, all right, we'll go 4th and inches. I agree. I don't like the play call. You got a play that works 80% of the time.
And that's 90, Mike, coming in.
Yeah, you're running
90% of the time. Yeah,
it's funny too. People have T-shirts made for this play. It's like everybody loves it. Now all of a sudden, everybody's turned on it.
In one game, by the way. In one game.
Turn it on them. I think we're just looking for a little bit of nuance in each situation, but we're not getting that. And I think it's very clear to me now that
I'm saying like
we ain't never getting it, so I might as well let it go.
I'm gonna
cry wolf though about it all year. Johnny Mack might have a head contusion.
Oh my God. Well, my frustration is I have to culpate, like so many Eagles fans I get talk about this talent like it's, the greatest team in living history, basically. And I got to go, come on, settle down. Tremendous offensive talent. And then the same people say, oh, you got to take the field goal there. I mean,
the interesting part about the analytics is we use analytics for when to go and when not to go. Analytics is basically a math equation, and yet we don't use the analytics of the math of what the score will be if you take the points.
Oh, that's baked into the analytics, Mike. You're going to get taken to analytics office in the corner, Mr. Analytics.
Well, that's then the analytics, but that's the thing. The analytics doesn't suggest in this situation take go up 2 scores as opposed to
the whole point.
Go for it. And stay at 1 score.
No. They take into account failure. Yes, they failure is a big part of it. That it's not just success. They're saying if you do this 100 times, it's going to be better than you do this 100 times. That the failure is baked into it. It's going to be way better than if you do that 100 times.
Right. But I'm suggesting is not the result of the play, what the score will be if you decide to take points over just going for it because the card says go for it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I've talked to Alec about this a lot. Alec Calaby, who runs, he's the assistant GM, so he's got a lot of responsibilities, far more. But he started out as the analytics guy. So I've had this discussion with him a lot. It's first of all, it's information. Number one, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. That's why you don't have 100% conversion rates, 100% failure rates. Everything's got to be factored in. The Eagles are different than teams that don't have the tush push and don't have that 90 percentile. That's factored in as well. Hey, we've had this success. We're 18 of 20 coming into the game on this particular play. That's factored in as well. And then Jacksonville. And by the way, one thing I thought about during the week is maybe Doug Peterson's more prepared than anybody to understand the Eagles are going to be aggressive. And so maybe his team's a little bit more prepared to be ready for it. Maybe that factored into it as well. So there's a lot of things that factor into it.
Hopefully Doug didn't put out the how to stop the tush push in this game. 2 stops and the tush push. Uh-oh.
Yeah. And maybe it's just a matter of preparation and being prepared, because a lot of times the Eagles,
if you're using the analytics on that, then get ready for them to be even more aggressive. They're saying if you stop us twice in the same game, we're not going to get stopped for weeks on this play now.
Well, I said the bigger fear for Eagles fans should be that they are wavering on this play and they think they're not as successful on this particular play. That would be the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the play to me is fine. I mean, quite frankly, I think Hurts got in on the one, and probably we're not having as much of this discussion.
I think he got in. So much of it is based on him not getting in, and
result.
Yeah, well, and Zander gets mad at me for pointing that out, but it's all based on result. People are going back in hindsight based on result.
All right, Mike, we kept you long. We appreciate you staying here, brother, and having the conversation of Nick Sirianni, the never-ending conversation.
Can you just send me the recording of this segment so I can just plug it into my show?
Plug it in.
I'll send it if you want me to.
Boy, he gets frustrated talking about it, man. Boy.
Hey, I have to do it for 4 hours.
And,
yesterday was interesting. I mean, we're on to Wednesday now, and we're looking back at this, and it goes back to what I said, Zander. Team 6-2. I don't know. Do people feel like this is a Super Bowl team? You're 6-2. You're right there. You're in play for the number 1 seed, and this is the conversation. Tells me that people aren't really sure about what this team is still. And I don't know if that's the scars from the last 7 games of last year. Have people moved on from those scars? Because it seems like instead of saying, man, this team's 6-2 and they're growing, it's the coach is holding us back. And that kind of tells me that people are still not sure what to think about this team.
Mike, thanks for joining the show, man. Great stuff as always. Love talking to you. We appreciate all the time you give us. We'll talk to you again next week. All right, brother?
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
At Mike Gill's show, Sports Bash 2 to 6. If you're local in South Jersey, 2 to 6 drive time.
It's really good down the shore. Whenever I'm down in the Jersey end, my girlfriend lives down there. I tune in to Mike Gill. They do a really nice job on that station. Big shout out to them. Big shout out to him for joining us. John, we got one super chat before we get the heck out of here for the
By
break.
the way, BLG, BLG is not a Nick Sirianni guy, so you might like BLG's takes. I think.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I get it because it's been this debate, but I don't really have a problem with Nick Sirianni. I would just like to see a little bit more situational. Like somebody in the chat was just like, oh yeah, I'm sure you liked the Philly special. I'm like, it was the Super Bowl. The Patriots didn't stop scoring. I think it's a different scenario, but that's all. Prince Swayze says the Eagles shouldn't try to be like other teams. At first, it was about emulating the 49ers. Now it seems they want to mimic the Lions. Be the Eagles.
Lions are mimicking the Eagles. The
they are.
Eagles were at the forefront of this. The Eagles were. I agree with the thought process. I don't like copycats. I say it all the time with Vic. I don't like all the copycats of Vic. Like, I want Vic, and the Eagles now have Vic, and it's working out, at least to this point. I don't like copycats. I don't like all the. I'm going to run Kyle's offense. I don't like it. I'm not hiring you. I don't like it. I do not like the Lions. No, the Lions. Follow the Eagles' lead, not vice versa.
Prince, appreciate the super chat, man. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Let's get to our commercial break. Back in 3 minutes with BLJ, Brandon Lee Gowton, coming up next from Bleeding Green Nation.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Dry Tech. At Dry Tech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give Dry Tech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. Joined now by Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us today. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Doing good, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, BLG. So even though I don't want to talk about it, I got to get your thought process on it. The decision making of Nick Sirianni. I don't want to put words in your mouth with my thought process on it, other than, boy, I'm surprised how many people have an issue with these decisions. Other than the 4th and 1 play call, 4th and inches play call, when they went away from the tush push, I think it all made sense. Am I being too easy on the decision making?
I think a lot of it made sense, and more sense than people would want to admit. I do think that you can go through those and parse some things. And I guess my issue with some of that conversation, or that, like, the ultimate criticism, would be more about the guiding principle, the overall kind of bigger picture philosophy. I still feel like there's kind of a haphazard and inconsistent element with that with Nick Sirianni. In case in point, like if the driving motto is to be aggressive, then I think you might have to go for it at the 4th and 4 at the end of the game there to really kind of just like take control and not just kick a 57-yard field goal, which is hardly a gimme, and only still be up one possession at that point. I also think that you could have. I want to see the numbers on it, but I'm generally a really big fan of going for 2 from the 1-yard line, especially when you have a pretty unstoppable play.
Used to be unstoppable.
Mostly unstoppable. Used to be unstoppable, but I think if it's a situation like it was on the first one where you can go up 3 possessions, like I think I have to reconsider that in that situation, because I'm like, well, what's really the difference between being up 17 or 18? And there's a big difference between being up 16 and 17. So I think there's a lot of nuance with all of that.
Yeah, and that's Zander's case. And like second quarter, I don't give a shit. Basically, I'm going to take advantage of the extra yard. I think that's their philosophy. Doesn't matter, situation score. If they give you a free yard, they're going to go for it with the tush push, which I kind of understand. Fourth quarter, a little bit different. I've often said the irony of this part, the irony to me, BLG, is this is an organizational philosophy to be sort of uber aggressive, dating back to the Super Bowl. One of the main reasons this team has its one Super Bowl is because they were ahead of the curve by being aggressive. To me, it's ironic that some of the haphazard stuff, and you're right, it's not consistent with Nick Sirianni. He's kind of the firewall. Like if we're up to the organization, they'd be more aggressive, I think. And Nick occasionally goes, you know what? I'm not feeling it right now. And like for me with the Jake Elliott field goal, because Jake hasn't been himself this year. I mean, typically last year guy was lights out. I would have punted. I would have punted there and said, let this shitty offense go the full distance. Rather than 4th and 4, because if you don't get that, you're giving them tremendous field goal position. Either way, they gave him tremendous field goal position with the missed field goal as well. But I would have played it personally a little bit more conservative there. But their organizational mindset, I think, is even more aggressive than Nick Sirianni's. You agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, and I've criticized Nick Sirianni at times for not being aggressive enough. Famously, in the Super Bowl on the 4th and 3 where they punt, and Kadarius Toney has that return. So yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I would say again, part of it is like, obviously, you can't just be like, "Hey, it didn't work out, so it's a bad decision." It's results based thinking. I mean, that's part of the process, and you have to evaluate. Okay, did they run a good play on these 4th downs? And I think that's part of my issue with the one where it's the turnover on downs there where they totally, and it's 4th and inches too, right? It's like a close one, not a far one. And I know you got stopped on the brotherly shove 2 times before, but again, to speak to a bigger point here, I think I've seen and heard Nick Sirianni kind of like cite anecdotal evidence a little too much, and you really shouldn't lose faith in that play just because you kind of got stopped, and maybe really even didn't get stopped on one of those 2-point conversions where it looked like Hurts might have actually even been over the goal line. But even if you did, it's inches. Come on, like you can get even if that play's not working for you, you're able to get inches.
Yeah, 100%. Now, because this didn't even cross my mind, but a lot of people have brought it up again. Like it doesn't even cross my mind. 4th and inches, kick the field goal there. Like that to me, I'm like, I'm not even considering that on 4th and inches. But the problem is they didn't tush push it. That I have a problem with.
Yeah. Well, I think I would say I don't like the field goal there generally, but if your operating presumption there is like we don't trust the tush push anymore, then I think maybe you should kick the field goal if you truly have gone away from that, which I don't think they should have, like I said. But if that's the case, then I'm more okay with that. If you're going to take the 2-possession lead there, go for that. Then run some other play when you could just run your unstoppable play or take a 2-possession lead. I chose the middle path, and I just don't like that from those.
BLJ, let's talk about the football now. I think the team has really started to put together some good-looking football, a lot better than, the first 4 weeks of the year when I was kind of like, what's going on? They're 2-2, but it's an ugly 2-2. Your takeaways from, we can start with the offense, what they've been able to do in the last couple of games and specifically what they did on Sunday. I thought they looked really good. And I think Jalen Hurts is back to playing, high caliber football.
I mean, what we were harping on earlier in the year is that you can't turn the ball over.
Yep.
And especially, I mean, not that's a given for like most quarterbacks in the NFL, but especially him, especially on a team where he has help and support around him. He doesn't have to be the guy carrying the offense by himself. Really just like don't mess it up. And obviously he's done more than just that. But at the baseline, you have to just not drag the team down, especially when you're playing inferior opponents who like you just can't give those extra opportunities to and keep them around in the game. They're hoping you beat yourselves. That's the best way they can win the game. And obviously Jalen Hurts has cleaned that up. He just looks a lot more comfortable. He's been really efficient. His numbers over the past few weeks here are they're really good. He has 12 touchdowns and 0 turnovers. Like that's winning football. So I think, part of it's him making good decisions, playing well, good throws. Part of it is just, the offense helping him. He's looking comfortable in that. Part of it is he doesn't really have to do a ton in terms of the Eagles being the most run heavy team in the NFL. Helps when you kind of drop those the pass attempts there, and he's able to be more efficient in a smaller volume passing attack. So really everything has kind of just come together and clicked for him.
Any concern, but obviously the numbers you just cited them have been tremendous during this 4-game winning streak for Jalen Hurts. But, some of the things you just talked about, the results-based thought process. And Nick admits, he understands he's going to be judged on results. Everybody's judged on results. But, boy, that 4th and 3 play was there, PLG. I mean, that should have been a touchdown. If the ball's out on time. The 4th and 1, I don't even know what they were doing. Yeah. I can't. I don't criticize them as much, the 4th and inches play, because I find it very hard to believe the progression involved E.J. Jenkins, but E.J. Jenkins was right in front of him, wide open. These are, in theory, easy conversions on big, high leverage spots. Any concern that quick processing, take what's there in those types of situations is still a bit of a problem?
Yeah, I think typically, obviously the turnover issues aside, which have seemed to have gone away, like when Jalen Hurts struggles, I think more often than not, it's just been about it's not about those killer turnovers over the course of his career. It's more about the plays that he's leaving on the field that are there to be made. And the AJ one, yeah, I remember watching that play from the press box live and being, oh, he has AJ. And that's a touchdown. If he hits him, if he leads them, or probably maybe gets to the 1, whatever. It's certainly a first down at the very least. And he had him. It was AJ with a step. And it's it's AJ. It's not some other guy in the progression. This is the guy Jalen Hurts loves throwing the ball to. And I feel like I've seen Jalen have good touch on those kind of plays too. So weird to me that ball would come up so short and come out so late in that situation there. And that's a big deal because you have a chance to take a 3-possession lead at that point in the game. Yeah, I mean, those are the plays that kind of make you worry. Obviously, every quarterback is probably leaving on some fields on the play to some extent. So, I don't want to harp on those too much as if it's not happening elsewhere. But those are the ones I think that do kind of give you pause that okay, as you're playing tougher teams, you're not going to have that same level of margin for error where you can't just, be doing that all game and then get away with that and win in the end.
BLG, the defense right now is 3rd in the league in just basic stat numbers. Pretty impressive stuff from them. Is this something you think they can keep up? Now, I am aware they haven't played the greatest offenses in the world, but I do think you're seeing a lot of good things, certain players stepping up that, you didn't expect. I mean, I don't know if you remember back in the offseason when we talked, this linebacker core was thought there might be a bottom 5 in the league. They're certainly not playing like that. I'm optimistic on the defense. Am I too optimistic that they can be a top 10 defense for the remainder of the year?
Well, this tougher stretch is coming up, so they're really going to be tested. But I give them credit certainly for doing what they should have against lesser competition. And look, they shut down Joe Burrow. He's pretty good. Trevor Lawrence isn't amazing, but for the Eagles to hold the Jags to what, like 31 or whatever, 32 yards it was in that first half. Like I don't care who you're playing against. Like that's dominant.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And
I think it was 36 yards, 9 minutes left in the third quarter until they went on that drive.
Yeah, like 18 plays or something. Yeah. Like it's crazy. And ultimately, 4 touchdowns over the past 4 games. Like it's pretty good. You'll sign up for that one.
Yeah. Let's talk about those linebackers, because I think there's been so much over the decision making. I mean, for the second consecutive week, Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean have been lights out. PFF had them both over 90 again. That never happens. Certainly in Philadelphia for linebacker play. Every week, I always say Vic Fangio says something that just makes me smile because the guy's so entertaining. But yesterday it was about Zach Bond, and he got sort of asked the question, did you, when you were evaluating him as a player, basically, did you consider that nobody else thought he was an all-ball linebacker? And Vic took sort of a backhanded shot at others, and he said he doesn't worry about that, yada yada yada. But I mean, we're all counting on Devin White, not me, but other people are counting on Devin White, and all of a sudden, I always talk about nobody can cover at linebacker except Fred Warner. You know who number 2 in the NFL is in coverage as a linebacker? Zach Bond. Unbelievable. Is this sustainable? Is this a mirage?
It's hard to say it's sustainable from the standpoint of, we just don't have the track record to say it is. But I mean, I think from the tools perspective and the IQ perspective, yeah. I mean, that play where he sinks into coverage and helps break up a pass early on, I legitimately thought that was a defensive back at that point. I was like, oh, who was that? I was like, oh, it's Zach Bond. He's dropping 20 yards downfield. Yeah. And then the next play or a play or two later, he's making a big stop and run defense. For a guy to have that kind of range, I mean, you're talking about Fred Warner, that's crazy kind of stuff that you just don't see really anywhere, let alone in Philadelphia from a linebacker. So, I mean, yeah, Zach Bond has been lights out. Feels like he's leading the team in the stops every week with those tackles that aren't just the meaningless kind of tackle where the running back picks up 8 yards. Field. Yeah, but the ones that limit him to 2 yards or is a tackle for loss. He had a tackle for loss in this game. And obviously Nakobe doing something that really didn't do as much in training camp when we all saw him have success downhill, but able to actually drop into coverage and make that interception. So, I mean, that's obviously huge.
Yeah, but real quick, here's the exact quote from Vic. There are a lot of people that want to know what the majority are thinking and kind of take the easy way out, but I've never been that guy. So he took the backhanded shots at everybody else. He's like, because I mean, you can go back to the owners' meetings and Howie was talking about him like he was Andrew Van Ginkel and he's going to be an edge player and sort of a hybrid, but more of an edge player. And Vic got a look at him and said, nope, he's an off-ball linebacker. And that was his history, for those who don't know, before he was the defensive coordinator, coached linebacker. So that's sort of his expertise. He's coached a lot of good ones. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed. I think of any other player, I'm amazed by Zach Bond more than any other player on this team. I did not see that coming at all.
No one did
at all.
Yeah, there's no way anyone out there was like, you know what? I'm actually a huge Zach Bond fan, and I don't think he looked bad in training camp, to be clear, or anything. But I mean, it was a very bizarre sequence
that first preseason game in Baltimore. He looked bad. You remember that? And you're like, oh, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, when we signed him, I remember it was like a nothing burger. It was one of those things. Oh, it looks like they picked up a practice squad guy. John, what's he rated overall in PFF? Because I know the last 2 weeks he's been like. Where is he overall?
Got to be like top 10 or something.
Got to be. I mean, he looks like it to me. The eye test would say he's top 10.
Yeah, he's got to be top 10 because he's had some great games. But I'll pull it up real quick. But N'Kobe's playing now. N'Kobe was playing poorly early in the season, so he's not.
He's
But
at
the
10th.
last,
He's
yeah,
at
the
10th
last
exactly.
2 games. Zach is 6th overall.
Okay.
6th overall, behind Fred Warner, Landon Roberts of Pittsburgh, who doesn't play that much. But the guys who play, Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner's too. Bobby Wagner's unbelievable. He keeps playing at a high level. Another Washington. Adam Peters is phenomenal, by the way. The kid from Jacksonville, who's a great linebacker. You just got to see him. Oloakin. And then Zach. So really, of the guys who play a lot, he's 4th, 6th overall. And he's 2nd in coverage to Fred Warner. 2nd. Unbelievable.
That's insane.
Unbelievable. And N'Kobe's high point in the football, getting people on wheel routes. And then Cooper DeJean as well. Cooper DeJean, to the point, I'm a big fan. People can probably realize that. But I will say, what the hell took so long with Cooper DeJean? I mean, Avonte Maddox was not playing well. I don't care about 20 days in training camp.
Yeah.
Get him out there. That is one nitpick I'll have with Vic. Cooper DeJean has been unbelievable.
He's been incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel bad for Avonte. He plays 1 snap against the Jags, and then that 1 snap he has the pass. It's like, it's almost like you can't have him out there on the field.
BLG, the trade deadline came and went yesterday. Eagles didn't make a move. A couple other NFC teams that I think are going to be there late in the year did make a move in the Commanders and the Lions. What did you make of the trade deadline yesterday? What did you make of the Eagles not making a move there?
Yeah, I was on board with Eagles not making a move unless it was, like kind of a big fish kind of acquisition, like Max Crosby. If you paid a premium price for someone that would help you this year, but also could be part of your future, absolutely. But anything short of that, I just think probably wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you.
Unless it was like for depth, whatever, you're giving up a future 7th, who cares? But like, I would not be shopping where the Eagles were the past couple of years, kind of there in that middle range where it seems like they got a great value at the time. And it turns out that player was available at that price for that reason. So I think they did a good job. I mean, if you could have gotten Zadarius Smith, obviously, I think that would have been a really good move. But, the Lions did instead. So really, I don't think there was a lot else out there for them. I will say, I think it's frustrating from the Eagles' perspective that, the Commanders get Marshawn Lattimore.
That is a good player, BLG. I was just about to ask you. I mean, that's a big deal for Washington. That really is.
100%.
And it makes them a lot better. And they're real. They're not going anywhere. And that game after Dallas, Thursday night short week here on Lincoln Financial Field. So that's an advantage for the Eagles. That's going to be those 2 games, the home and home series, that's going to decide the NFC East. And I don't think Washington's going anywhere. Adam Peters he looks like he put one over on Howie when it came to Jahan Dotson. And now he's getting a player like that at the trade deadline. Is it time to admit that the Commanders are for real?
I mean, yeah, I think they have been. Now they have faced the 2nd easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. So, they have had some lighter opponents here. They played Baltimore pretty tough when they played the Ravens. So I'm not going to say it's all just because they're playing lesser teams. And certainly the Eagles have been playing some lesser teams here recently. But just like I said with the Eagles, it will be interesting to see how the Commanders look against some of these better teams. I think it'll be good. But, I don't know if they'll just keep winning every single game. Lattimore is still pretty good to me. He's allowing just a 69.1 pass rating this season, and that's after allowing just 74.7 last year, 67.3 the year before. So he hasn't made like one of his 4 Pro Bowls in a while, but I still think he's been playing pretty well there. And yeah, I mean, the Commanders make this trade in part because they had an extra 3rd round pick, and it wasn't the 3rd round pick that the Commanders ultimately gave from the Eagles to the Saints. But honestly, that's even better because it's the one that's the higher of the Dolphins or the Eagles, and it's actually Like could be a really early 3rd round pick. If the Dolphins keep losing there and the Commanders are able to hold on to that. So it's not a great situation for the Eagles in terms of their top threat in the division is getting better at a big position of weakness for them. And not only just this year, but they're going to have to deal with Lattimore presumably for a couple more seasons here. He's under contract through 2026. So if you're an Eagles fan, like I don't think that's not a trade you love to see.
Yeah. No doubt. BLG, it's Cowboys week, and it doesn't really feel like it yet. At least it's only Wednesday, but I mean, that Cowboys team is just not the same Cowboys team they've been in recent years. How you viewing this game right now? I don't want to go to sleep on the game because it's still an NFC East opponent, but boy, it doesn't look good for the Dallas Cowboys right now.
No, not at all. Defense is allowing the 2nd most points per game in the NFL. So Mike Zimmer's unit's been pretty, rough there. We've seen him specifically struggle against the run, like when we saw them go up against Derrick Henry. Obviously, the Saints had success running against them early in the season. That was the Saints' last win, by the way. So I think this Eagles offense should be able to get after this defense. And then when it comes to the Cowboys offense, I mean, they're missing Dak, but Dak wasn't playing well. He's actually playing probably the worst football of his career. And
Cooper Rush.
Well, we'll see, right? Is it going to definitely be him? Is it going to be Trey Lance? We'll see.
That's true.
But either way, I mean, not the most inspiring group there.
No. Any chance, it's funny to say this because Cowboys have been, 12, 12, 12. They win, obviously they're not that team anymore. And now Washington, we just talked about, has the big turnaround. It's funny to say this because the Eagles haven't won at AT&T Stadium in so long, but any trap game vibes for you? They're thinking about Washington more than they're thinking about it. How crazy is that, by the way?
Yeah.
Thinking about Washington more than you're thinking about Dallas.
I think it wouldn't count from a standpoint of like you just almost kind of had sort of a trap in the Jags a little bit. And then also like it's a division game. If you're overlooking a divisional opponent, like what are you doing? I know, the injury kind of changes things there, but I mean to me it's just like they haven't won there since 2017 and the Cowboys have beat up on them a number of times in recent years. Time to get back at them and really, assert yourself and even though they're not officially dead, like stick a fork in the Cowboys. Like if you're a serious team, go down there and take care of business and turn the page to Washington, and then get your starters out early. Ideally, like beat them so badly you can pull your starters in the 4th quarter, and then you have that little extra lead up going into the Thursday game.
Speaking of starters, and the Eagles have done it. They didn't do a good job of that in 2022, but they've been doing a good job of that now to get them out. The touches, Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
And the leap, the Jimmy Snuka leap, the backward leap, he got banged up on that play.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Is that sustainable, or they have to start paying more attention to this? They claim they do it during the week. Is that sustainable? I mean, Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. Spends $750,000 a year on his body. He's a monster. Saquon's a monster in his own way, but Derrick Henry's more equipped to handle punishment than I think anybody else.
I think he's averaged, John, over his career like 330 touches a year. Like he's used to this type of workload.
Any concern at all on that aspect of it for you?
Yeah, and I think this is why, it's disappointing when the Eagles aren't able to really like put the Jags away in that game, because if they do, then Saquon doesn't have to have whatever many touches he finished with there, and they're able to get more Kenny Gainwell and probably even Will Shipley into the game there. So I think that's kind of the way they have to manage it is they have to beat up on these teams more because like you can't just be like, well, you have to bring his touches down and at the expense of you're losing the game. Like ultimately you need to win.
Well, not if you're losing, but you think there's something to, maybe giving Kenny or Will Shipley a series and once every 4 series and be disciplined.
Sure.
Just to lower it a little bit. And I mean, everybody does it. That's generally the thought process around the NFL. Everybody's got the lead back, and you got the complimentary guy who comes in every few series. Boy, I think that would be at least somewhat of a way to extend it because, boy, I don't know. But he is, Saquon is put together himself. I see that. I look at Christian McCaffrey last year and I said, everybody talks about what a year. Then he comes back and he's out for half the season.
Yep.
There's a cumulative effect. I think the Eagles need to be more disciplined.
Yeah.
Or am I just, should I buy a dog, as Howard Eskin would say? Am I too scared?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I just think it's like easier said than done. I think that's the part that's challenging. But I think you're saying you have to almost go into it with the plan of like, we're gonna have a drive here for Kenny or whatever. Like it's harder to just be like, oh, we'll figure it out in the course of the game, because I think it's a very simple, like, wow, this player is awesome and we need him to win. And then you're not going to want to take that guy off the field if you're not going into it with the plan of. So, yeah, I do think they should go into it, with a better plan of trying to scale this down. But again, you can only do it so much.
Fair enough.
Yeah. BLG, thanks for joining the show, man. Great stuff as always. Appreciate you doing it on a weekly basis. Looking forward to talking to you again next week. Hopefully we got another win to talk about. Then we'll see you then. All right, BLG.
BleedingGreenNation.com. Make sure you read BLG there, at Brandon Gowton on X. Every morning go to Bleeding Green Nation, get your latest picks on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Thanks, BLG.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff there from BLG. Look, I love talking to BLG. You were right. I mean, you said it before he came on that, you thought BLG would have a similar take to me. He kind of did. I mean, but I'm done talking about the Nick Sirianni stuff.
Let's turn the page. It's Dallas week.
Yeah, does it not?
By the way, we'll have plenty of to talk about next week with Nick Sirianni. But
what makes you say that?
Because
it's a recurring.
He's the lightning rod. That's people are going to blame Nick. Dan put out anything. Dan's getting a lot of heat at the Novacare complex. Dan,
you can't say what somebody said about him, even if you don't name him.
Well, it's criticizing somebody else, by the way, it's to a local person, which I don't want to do. But Dan put out a tweet that now that they're running Kellen Moore, the classic, the lowest of the low hanging fruit. So in other words, when the offense, and I talked about this all the time, when the offense was doing poorly, that's Nick. And when the offense is doing well, that's Kellen. And that's pathetic from Dan.
I've never subscribed to that.
That's a guy who played quarterback. He knows better. Come on, dude. But for a lot of people, they believe that. And if they're going to have a struggle game, I can't tell you when, but they're going to struggle offensively again. And there's a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, Nick must have taken the play calling away from, or the game planning away from Kellen Moore." It's just such insanity. But he put it out there. Yeah, it didn't go over well.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. John, how you viewing this Dallas week, man? I said to BLG, it doesn't really feel like a Dallas week at this point. Because
Cooper Rush, man. I mean,
this Dallas team is just they're
bad.
They're awful. Bad. I mean, they're really bad. They're a bad football team.
And we'll get a better indication because the first injury reports will come out. I think Mike is getting closer. I'm not positive. I haven't done any work.
I just wonder if they're going to roll him out there if he's close, because you don't have Dak. You might not have CD. Like, why even put Micah out? I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't be their thinking, but kind of like the AJ thing early in the year where they're like, give him the extra week before the bye, and then he'll come back fully 100%.
That's possible. Yeah. And obviously, look, if they don't have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence isn't ready, and their defense is terrible, their offense is terrible. I mean, this is a game where you thought would be one of the keys to the NFC East. This is going to be a cakewalk, or it should be a cakewalk. And the real game is next week, the week after. Excuse me. with Washington, which is going to be much more meaningful. So that's how quickly things change in the NFL. And they're banged up and they don't have their quarterback. And not that the quarterback was playing well anyway, but obviously he's a lot more. You got a lot more to worry about with Dak Prescott than Cooper Rush. I don't care how many Eagles fans hate Dak Prescott, but much tougher test than Cooper Rush. Yeah, there's not a lot of hope in Dallas right now. And I know nobody around here is going to shed a tear about that.
No doubt, and Dak is certainly a better quarterback than him. Johnny Mac, got a couple minutes left on the show today. Your final thoughts. Trade deadline came and went. We've now moved in officially to now the second half of this season. We did some midterm grades yesterday on the afternoon show. Just kind of your overall thoughts as we wrap up this show on where this team is through 9 weeks and what the second half of the year could look like.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are right where you want them to be. Legitimate NFC contender. I'd say they're right in the mix with right underneath the Detroit tier, who is by themselves. So, we'll see how things shake out. But the trade deadline, I don't have much of an issue with standing pat. It's just disappointing because the other, teams, some of the other teams, not everybody.
Yeah, I try not to get too much in that though, because it's like if you have a good plan to build your roster, you shouldn't always have to make a move.
No, I agree wholeheartedly.
And Eagles haven't had a big injury this year where you're looking at a spot like, wow, we have to make up for that. I didn't have an issue.
You almost have to live with it. Like I had said early on, I thought Zadarius Smith could be the guy.
Yeah, you did. You've been saying that for a while, actually.
Because he can still play. He can still get significant pass rush. Not that he was, not that he's at the height of his career, would certainly be only for a half a season. So that factors into it. But you can't do it unless you figure out, again, you have to make two moves. You can't just bring him in and bench somebody. You have to make two moves. And we all know we're talking about Bryce Hall. You can't just bring him in and bench Bryce Hall.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And I get why people don't understand that. And I get why they don't care about that. But when you pay somebody $51 million and you make a mistake in evaluation, or the defense, whatever excuse you want to use, or the defensive coordinator doesn't like him, or maybe he just stinks. But when it doesn't work out, you pay a price. And you can't go make that move. Bottom line. And they didn't. And that's the reason why. Not that Detroit might have gotten him anyway. Because there's a more clear, definitive path for Zadarius. Like if I'm Zadarius Smith and I have to choose between Detroit and Philadelphia, I'm choosing Detroit. Because I know I'm not in a 4-man rotation. I know I'm going to be the guy, basically.
Right. I was a little surprised by his numbers this year. He's still having a good year. He's still a good player. He's a good
player, man. He's a good passer. You're just good, consistent pass rusher.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, John. I think I literally have a little bit of PTSD from Robert Quinn because I got excited about that trade. I'm like, this dude had 18 sacks a year ago. So these old guys, I get nervous that they're just gonna fall off a cliff at any moment. But Zadarius Smith seems to be he's still playing good football.
And Robert Quinn was a great passer. He just
I know he was. No, I'm not trying to criticize him, but he obviously didn't, didn't do much when we traded the fourth for him.
I mean, that's one of those things where, again, I say it all the time, nothing's static in this league. And, if you get hurt, and in his indication at his age, he hurt his knee, and that was it, man. And it happens to everybody. What's that?
What'd you make of the Steelers moves? They made 2 moves yesterday. I was surprised to see Green Bay trade a player. I thought,
Preston Smith. I thought I was surprised. That was the biggest surprise.
I just didn't expect Green Bay to be sell, and that maybe they weren't sellers. Maybe there was contract stuff going on there. But when you see a team that is whatever they are, I think they're 6-2 or 6-3 or somewhere in that range. I didn't expect them to be sellers. Maybe they weren't sellers, but they did move a player to Pittsburgh, and we'll play Pittsburgh later in the year. So they added the receiver yesterday. And Preston Smith.
Yeah, I mean, he's older, and it's one of those things where, he makes a decent amount of money, signed, I think, for a couple more years. They had younger players they want to go with, and they got something for him. So, but he's been a good player as well. In fact, those two used to be a pain in the ass with Green Bay. Preston Smith from one side, Zadarius Smith from the other. When in their primes, they were really good together. But yeah, aging player. I'm a little surprised with, Pittsburgh believing that maybe it's time to make a move and seize. Good for them, but I don't think they're in the category with Kansas City, Baltimore. But they keep winning games. So, I like teams that try, and they're trying. So you have to give them credit for that.
Yep. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Great show today. Hopefully everyone had a 2-hour release of all the election coverage and everything that went on yesterday in our country, and that will probably continue to go on for the remainder of the week. We appreciate you guys, each and every one of you in the chat. My girl SMD, appreciate you, Marie, Flexen, Daz, Deshay, Jarrell. What's up, Jarrell? James Jones, Dawood Jones. Appreciate all you guys. Barbara Carroll, Sam Fleming, Solvang. Appreciate everyone for checking in this morning. Like I said, I hope we were a little bit of a release for you, and love your neighbor, everybody. I don't think you should outcast anybody if they don't think like you. I got some of that last night on my ex account when and I'm just like, come on, man. Just because somebody doesn't think like you doesn't mean they're an enemy.
That you talk about. Look, sun came up this morning. It's coming up tomorrow.
Yep.
It's coming up the next day. If you run your life believing social media is real, or you run your life, I shouldn't get into this, but here I am, and I got to leave anyway. But you run your life basically thinking everyone that doesn't think exactly like you is a bad person, you're going to be a very unhappy person.
I couldn't agree more, Johnny Mac. Everybody's going to have their own opinions. Everybody's going to get to their conclusions based on their circumstances, their event, their experiences and their life. And I don't know that. So I'm never going to criticize somebody. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to have my own opinion.
I said, be kind to people, hold the door at the convenience store, return the shopping cart. And I have a hunch, I haven't done the work. Maybe I'll bring it up to the analytics people at the Eagles, but I have a hunch that the people that don't return their shopping carts are these angry people that think everybody should think like them. That is the greatest. People talk about entitlement and privilege and words like that. That is the most entitled, privileged person you can be by assuming everybody else should think like you.
I agree, and I think you had good sentiments there. But everybody, just we're all American. Well, we're actually not all Americans. We got a lot of people, John, in our chat that are international. Appreciate everybody who watches, but love your neighbor, everybody. I think everything is all good. And like Johnny Mac said, I love Johnny Mac's take. He said the sun came up and it'll come up again tomorrow. Appreciate everybody being here. Johnny Mac, great show, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow, right, brother?
All right, thanks everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.